What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we have a pretty huge news update, and so Bungie give details on future changes, fixes to lag issues in the game, and confirmation about armor changes coming up in Lightfall. But on top of this, we get a bunch more detail about subclass updates coming for 3.0 elements in the future, that includes roaming super buffs, but additionally Bungie talk about how we'll unlock Strand, triple melee charges, and more. Then on top of this, we get an early look at Strand UI icons, Bungie talk contest mode, which will be extended to 48 hours. And they've even started production on the final shape expansion for 2024. And so there's plenty to touch on today guys. As always, I hope you enjoy the video. Also be sure to get subscribed, we're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about in Lightfall. But otherwise, let's get into it. Initially, a few updates from Bungie here, and Bungie Help said we've been tracking a new latency issue that began at the start of Season 19, which manifested differently than typical latency. As of February 3rd, our external partners identified and fixed this issue that was impacting network quality between players during our peak hours. The Destiny 2 team went on to say, to be clear, we don't intend this to come across as us saying that all lag has been fixed forever, but we're confident that this specific issue has been fixed, and we've identified a few others that will be addressed when Lightfall launches. And so less latency, fewer server issues, of course, all of that stuff is welcomed, and we'll see how it goes when the expansion drops. But up next, the Destiny 2 team said, we saw some questions about how Artifice armor will work after the Lightfall build crafting updates we shared, and we wanted to clarify that these changes will be retroactive. So for any Artifice armor we currently own, including stuff that we farm right now, all updates made in Lightfall will apply to them as well. So you can go ahead and farm if that's what you want to do. Some additional updates about the game here though. Bungie also said we're investigating an issue causing players to be unable to join competitive Crucible matches after their in-game suspension is scheduled to expire, and players affected by this issue can resolve it by playing a comp match with an alternate character. So quick update on that if it's affecting you. And additionally, Bungie Help said we're aware of a problem with the description for the Icy Singularity Seasonal Challenge, and players need to defeat targets with Void or Stasis effects while in Gambit matches in order to progress. So bear in mind, Void or Stasis in Gambit is the way to actually get that challenge complete. Up next though, we got a new interview with Bungie and PC Gamer, and they talk about some of the changes and content in the Lightfall expansion. So initially they say that Strand will be easier to unlock than Stasis was, and they say we learned a lot from the Born in the Darkness quest, which is how we got the Stasis subclasses. The friction there was way too high, especially for newer players just coming in. And PC Gamer say unlocking Strand will still require players to complete the Lightfall campaign, but Bungie said at campaign completion, you're actually going to have a fairly representative subclass, unlike Stasis, which was more of a skeleton of a subclass. So that sounds positive, and additionally they said we can expect to see more fragments and aspects released as part of the seasonal model over 2023, and by the end of the year, we're going to have a complete subclass kit that will be able to stand toe-to-toe with your existing suite of powers. And so not only will it be easier to get access to more of Strand initially, but they will be updating it throughout the entirety of 2023. Also in the interview, they speak about Tangles and how this new Strand element is the Warmind cell replacement. And they said that Tangles come from their desire to take Warmind cells, grab a part of that loop, and bring it into the core gameplay. We knew that Warmind cells were going to go away, and they were never really intended to live forever. And so the question became, what's a class-based version of Warmind cells that's cohesive, married to a damage type, and has a new set of interactions and verbs behind it? And so no doubt we can expect various perks and mods to interact with these kind of Strand elements. And on top of that, they said that Strand is the first subclass to grant 3 melee charges. Bungie said historically we tend not to give players 3 melee charges by default, but with Strand, the Titan and Warlock get 3, and the Titan's melee sends you forward a considerable distance, so you're able to close a gap pretty easily by chaining 3 melees together. And the speed at which you can move because of this is really high. Mobility and aerial play will be at the core of all Strand subclasses, but Hunters will be the ones permanently up in the rafters. So that's pretty interesting. And they also speak about how they hope Strand won't be a huge nightmare for PvP. We wanted to come up with something clever enough to make you feel like Spider-Man while you're playing in Neomuna, but in PvP, not make somebody want to toss their controller. They also hope that Strand won't be the only dominant flavor in PvP when it launches. And they say we're pretty happy with how it's playing right now, but ask us in 4 weeks and maybe the answer will be different. And so essentially they're saying we've tried to ensure that it won't be broken in PvP, but for now, there isn't necessarily a promise of that. Certainly an interesting one right there, and one of the final major bits to pick out right here, but they say the team has plans for roaming supers in PvE to slot them into more compelling roles versus one-off supers. And Kevin Yana says they have plans to buff them, but they can't go into detail yet. other than that they're looking at damage output and orb generation as the areas for improvement. And so a few additional changes coming up both in Lightfall and Year 5 right there. There are a couple of other insights in the full interview, so it's definitely worth checking out, and I will link that down below. Next though, there's an update about the Lightfall raid here, and the Destiny 2 team added that the Lightfall raid will launch on Friday, March 10th at 9 AM PST, so Friday's daily reset, and the contest mode on the Lightfall raid will be active for 48 hours, ending on Sunday, March 12th, and that'll be at 10 AM PDT. So ahead of time, they are making this contest period longer, and they add that they're extending contest mode by an additional day to allow teams pursuing the emblem to have more chances to take breaks, as well as to allow anyone who has commitments on Friday to still have time to participate. And so more details will be available in a future TWAB. That's Bungie's justification. I know there are some mixed thoughts on a change like this, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Separately though, of course, we got the Strand trailer yesterday, and the GamePost.com and Destiny Bulletin had shared some supposed leaks for Strand UI. So obviously a mild spoiler alert is necessary here, but they're just images and some of them we've already seen. Initially we've got the Titan subclass background screen right there with the character, and on the left we can see there are ability icons, as well as some which will be aspects and fragments. Next up we have the Warlock, and again these will be the live backgrounds for the subclass screens. And then finally the Hunter. It's pretty cool to get a better look at those. Next though, as we move towards Lightfall, we have a couple of other updates from Bungie about the launch. And so initially, there will be 24 hours of downtime immediately before Lightfall goes live, and Bungie say D2 will be brought offline for 24 hours starting at 9 AM PST on February 27th. And players will be reminded of the downtime in-game and on our social media channels before it starts. But just bear in mind that is around about the daily reset time on Monday, February 27th, the day before Lightfall drops. And they add that during this period, players can pre-download Lightfall on all platforms. They say be aware that the download file will be large, but the new installation overall will improve load times, and overall disk space usage will be smaller afterwards. Once the game's brought back online and Lightfall has launched, sign-in queues are expected, especially during the first hours and peak playtimes. And so the dreaded queue will no doubt be a thing as Lightfall drops. Hopefully otherwise, it will be a smooth launch, but as we've seen with Destiny, it will be what it will be. The final thing we're going to mention right here for today though, and Destiny Tracker pointed out that Andrew Hops from Bungie has now updated his job roles to campaigns at Bungie on the final shape. And so obviously with that content side of Lightfall wrapped up, it's safe to say Bungie are definitely getting to work on the next major expansion for after Lightfall for 2024. Certainly pretty exciting stuff, and it is going to be an interesting couple of years, no doubt. Also bear in mind, Bungie have multiple different teams working on different things, so obviously there'll be teams kind of finishing up and wrapping up certain elements for Lightfall, and at this point specifically preparing it to launch. But there'll be other separate teams working on various bits of season content, possibly across multiple different seasons in the next year, and then expansion teams that are working on much larger content drops that come further down the road. But certainly a lot of players will be very curious to see both how the game improves, what new content and major changes we get over the next year, but also that story arc moving from Lightfall into the final shape, which Bungie kind of refer to as the end of this saga of Destiny. So certainly you would expect it to be pretty dope, right? But as always, we'll see, and let us know what you guys think below. For today though, that is everything we have to speak about in the video, guys. And so if you're new to the channel and you've enjoyed this video, then feel free to hit the subscribe button down below. We'll be covering all the major content in the new expansion in a few weeks. But also a like rating down below really does help us out, guys. And let us know in the comment section what you're most looking forward to in the next year. But otherwise, I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.